Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters Encounters video. Well, I thought I'd mix things up here and talk about an encounter, not with a skinwalker, but actually with another cryptid, something that I've talked about, or at least a variation of it, in the past. This is something that I'm trying to mix in more of. The only problem, though, is there's not too many encounters that people have with cryptids, and even if they do, a lot of people just aren't talking about them outright. But at least in this case, this comes from the reddit.com website. They're from the subreddit called Paranormal, but it involves a very unique, almost scary encounter with an elf. I've kind of talked about them in the past, more along the lines of gnomes, and I'll include the link below if you want to check out my past video when it comes to gnomes. But in this case, it's a pretty scary encounter because this elf could have been doing something pretty sinister. More on that here in a minute. But it comes from a user by the name of Zeta Gifils, and they titled it as My Brief Encounter with an Elf. So let's go ahead and let's share that entry here, and then I'll give my own thoughts and opinions on it afterward. So here's what they state. Before I start, sorry for my English. Everything I'm going to tell you is true, and I swear I was very scared. I believe in magic and mysteries, but I didn't expect to find an elf in my face. So one night, many years ago, I think it was between the years 2009 to 2011, I was between 20 to 22 years old, and I was on my old computer at night, and I was curious to see things about mysteries on the internet. I found a page with themes of magic and magical animals. So there was a phrase for being quote-unquote friends with an elf. So I read it out loud. It was in an unknown language, and nothing happened at that moment, and I didn't give it any importance later on. It was 10 p.m. And so at about midnight, I just went to sleep. Now, I usually wake up a lot at dawn because I have insomnia. I wake up every hour, and then a few seconds later, I just go back to sleep. So it was about 1:30 a.m. I was sleeping, and I opened my eyes, and that's when I saw something was pulling up the duvet, which I was covering myself with so as not to be cold that night. This something was about 20 centimeters tall, and it was on top of my mattress. I couldn't see it very well since this all happened in just half a second and it was all dark, but there was definitely something very close to my face, covering me with a duvet up until the neck. And so instinctively, I covered myself with the duvet and I started hitting the inside of it to try to get rid of whatever this thing was that had scared me. I was in there super scared, and so I took courage and I quickly lowered the duvet to my hips. Then I turned on a small TV that I had near my feet, at least to try to get some light in the room. Once the TV was on, I looked around the room and I saw nothing. I was still in a state of panic, and I said out loud, I don't want to see anyone else, any elves or goblins. And since that night, nothing has appeared in my room. However, 2 years later, I heard that my brother, who slept in a nearby room, told me that he saw, out of the corner of his eye, an elf, small and dark, running from his closed door to the also closed window. He also said that this happened in a flash, in a split second, and this happened around 2 or 3 a.m. So I asked him when it happened. I did the math, and I think it was the same day/night that I kicked that poor elf out of my room to never see him again. From the looks of it, elves can walk through doors and windows. I hope you liked this short story that I have never told anyone and wanted to share. All the best. Then that's it. That's everything that the user Zeta Gifils stated with their encounter. So let's talk about that here. First off, it's pretty interesting that this came about when with regards to them stating this phrase. I'm glad they didn't post it like when it comes to this reading that I was doing. If I was, I would have been shaking my head inside because I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to see it. Nothing like that. So I'm glad that they didn't copy and paste it here, nor do I really recommend anyone else trying that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a little too out there even for me when it comes to the dangers and the risks associated with it. But they did it that night back in 2009 to 2011. They saw this language. They called it an unknown language, this phrase. They said it out loud. Obviously, nothing happened right then and there, but cut to a little bit later that night, and that's when they ran into that elf. I was thinking if it was more on the lines of an elf or slash gnome, but who knows? I wish there was more description associated with this thing. All it was that it was about 20 centimeters tall, but no description like if it had big ears or if it had a hat or if it had long legs, anything like that. It was just too dark and too brief when it comes to seeing it only for half a second. But still, them seeing it and then also their brother seeing it both confirms that there truly was something there. Something had crossed from the mystical over to reality once this person said whatever it was when it comes to that phrase out loud, almost like a form of Beetlejuice, right? And then once that happened, obviously that created such a horrific experience. Now, the reason I was saying that this might have been more sinister than expected is this. That one phrase when it comes to the elf, as far as the user stating that it was pulling the duvet up over them, and at that time it was just above their neckline, makes you wonder why. Why was the elf doing that? Maybe there's a chance that it was trying to cover this user in a nice way. Like, in other words, it was cold that night. Maybe it was making sure that the user stayed warm. I don't know, though. That seems a little too far for me. Instead, the fact that it was sneaking up on that user, being ever so quiet with regards to it, and then getting caught right then and there, the fact that it was up to the neckline leads me to suspect that instead it was going to cover the user with the duvet and who knows what, cover their mouth, cover their nose, suffocate them. That's the extreme that I was thinking whenever it comes to this encounter. When you think about it, that's pretty scary because somebody would be sleeping at that time. If it's done in a very discreet way, it could almost be done right there without the person ever waking up, and then they would have no idea, no clue as to what occurred. Like, the people around them would have no clue what happened to them. All they would know is that they just ended up dying in their sleep. But obviously it was something else much more sinister. That's at least my thoughts when I was thinking about this thing and the way it just came about. All of it just leads to me more being on the bad side, more evil side. But again, just my opinion. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that too. Was this elf trying to be friendly, making sure that the user was just staying warm, or did it come about whenever that phrase, whatever that was, that could have been an evil phrase, caused it to come out and then cause it to almost kill or try to do something really, really bad to this user? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that too. And again, check out the link below in case you haven't seen my previous video on gnomes. It got a good number of views, and so it's your chance to see more coverage when it comes to that too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.